The small market town of Uttoxeter in Staffordshire, famous at one time for Bamford's, the farm machinery manufacturers, and now only 5 minutes away from the world famous JCB earth moving equipment factory, is the setting today for this pigeon video. The name of the late Bill Steele was synonymous with the long distance pigeon racing a quarter of a century ago, and the Steele of Uttoxeter bloodlines can still be found in some present day winning pigeons. The methods and systems of present day pigeon fanciers have changed considerably over the years, and today we are taking a closer look at the methods of a young man, Michael Burden, who is rapidly climbing the ladder of success in long distance pigeon racing of the 90s. Introducing and presenting the video, we have another successful and well-known pigeon fancier, John Halstead. John has had almost 25 years involvement with pigeons and 10 years association with the video industry.
Here we are today at the loft of Michael Burden of Uttoxeter in Staffordshire. Mick has enjoyed a rapid and successful rise from a novice in 1988, when he first raced pigeons in his own name, to the summer of 1991, when he has reached the top 60 in both the National Flying Club's premier races, Nantes and Pau. At Nantes, a distance of 391 miles and a flying time of over 10 hours, he was 53rd and 89th open out of 10,591 birds, and at Pau, a distance of 663 miles, he was first section, 48th open out of almost 5,000 pigeons. Add to these results top 10 positions in the Northwest section in the Midlands National Nantes and Livorno races this season. In his local club, the Uttoxeter United Homing Society, Mick has also won the 1991 Channel Averages, despite sending his best birds to the Nationals. And for the second year running, was first and second from Saints, the longest club race. In 1990, he had 3 of only 4 birds on the day from this 498-mile race, and in 1991, the only bird on the day in the club. It would be true to say that Mick is really only interested in the long-distance channel races, and today, Michael Burden has invited us to view his birds and disclose the methods which has taken him from novice to nationals. It was July of 1988 then, Mick, when you first had pigeons in your own name then?
That's right, yeah.
Before that, did you have any involvement with pigeons?
Well, my father kept them and I used to help him out from the age of about 12 to 15, but I was basically the scraper boy, so...
You had no real control over matters at that time?
I had no control, no. I was just the novice, the apprentice.
Yeah. And in 1988, did you have stock birds to breed from, or did you buy in young birds?
I bought in a lot of young birds, and I did 1 or 2 stock pigeons, like the good bandwagon cock. But I bought most of my youngsters. I bought about, and bred, about 100 young birds through that season.
As many as that?
They're not all in one go. But out of that, they were there for testing and breeding.
So, did you give them early training in that particular year?
No, same as before. A week or 2 weeks before, they were trained.
And the first race, you had a good performance, I understand.
That's right, yes. It was a stinker of a race. It rained all day. It was only 50 miles. But it took nearly 2 hours for the first arrival, which was my pigeon. And then 20 minutes later, my second arrival arrived. And I finished up first and second in that race. So you actually won the race, your first race, very first
as a novice by 20 minutes?
That's right, yes. Although it was only a sweep, so they didn't class it as breaking me novice.
Well,
but having said that, the very last race, which was the longest race, I won that from Plymouth.
From Plymouth, 200 miles?
200 miles.
And that was the last young bird race in 1988 season. Tell us about the construction of the loft.
Well, I built the loft with ventilation in mind. There's plenty of louvers, and the wind will either blow in that way and out through the back through a big wire netting gauge, or if the wind's blowing the other way, it'll come that way. Plus, it takes out a lot of dust, which I think is really important to the birds.
Yeah. And which direction does the loft face then, Michael?
The loft at the moment faces south-east, but I'm not really too worried about that. I don't think it matters which way it faces, as long as you've got plenty of room for them to come in and land, especially for the long distance races.
Certainly got a good clear view here and a good drop. You can see the pigeons coming from a good way off, is that right?
That's right, yeah. Plus the fact with young birds, you tend to lose less pigeons because they can actually see the loft.
Right.
On the short take-off point, they get up and gone and they don't know where they are.
Yes, indeed. What do you treat the outside of the loft with, Michael?
Well, this is painted with creeping all on the outside, just to tone it down, keep the neighbours happy. And on the inside, it's a cheap Wilco fence guard, which is just to try and keep the bugs down, to make it look a bit more respectable.
And you find that this does keep the bugs down, as you say?
Well, it looks nice. Whether it does or not, I don't really know.
Right. So, what temperature does the loft remain at? Do you have any particular temperature, or is it just low, hot, cold?
It does what it feels like. I never really pay a lot of attention to it. You can imagine it's pretty ambient, but the temperatures outside is what's inside.
Yeah, right. Shall we have a look at the inside of the loft then, Michael?
Yes.
It's looking good, mate.
Yes, I put this down to the straw and plenty of room, and they just seem very happy and natural.
Is this your main racing loft then?
Yeah, this is the Widowwood loft, and as you can see, they're all paired up, rearing around the lake beds that they've...
Well, this being the end of the season?
This being the end of the season, yeah.
Quite. And I can see your louvers to give plenty of air blowing through the loft then.
Yeah, I built it to try and put as many louvers in without reducing the light. So I've had to compromise. They're not adjustable, so they're on all the time.
And you think that the temperature does remain pretty constant? And
I think so. If they're rock pigeons and they're out on the muddy mountains or wherever they live, they're out and face all the elements, and it's only there to try and make them a bit more hardy.
Quite. And you think this is important for channel racing then, which is your speciality?
I think so, yes. They've got to be a hardy pigeon if they've got to spend a night out on the tiles, and it's no good having one that just hasn't got the constitution.
Yes, indeed. The straw then, Michael, you change that regularly, do you?
Change it about once every 12 months, and at the moment I'm just starting to take it out. To make it easier, I'll take a bit out every time I scrape out until it's all clear, and then I'll put a full bale in, which will stop in all year, but I add to that as it gets dirty.
And the pigeons are happy with the straw? And
they love the straw. If you put the bath in, they'll all have a bath, and they'll all lie down in the straw as if they're in a big nest.
Quite. What about the nest boxes then, Rick? You built these yourself as well?
Well, all these are built, but they're built completely separate, so should I have to move, all I've got to do is unscrew them from the wall and take them with me. There is no specific size requirements, just they fit the nest box fronts.
So they're really standard size Widowwood nest boxes?
Yeah, there's nothing special about them at all.
No. And I see you use the pot nest bowls.
Yeah, I bought them, but I think you're probably better off using dandy nests because you have to keep cleaning these out all the time, and with a dandy nest you just throw it away.
Well, yes. And I see they've got plenty of straw in some of the nest bowls. Do they pick that up off the floor and build their own nests then?
They do when the straw's fresh. When it gets dirty they don't seem to touch it, so if I put fresh straw in, some on them, fill the nest bowl right to the roof.
Yeah.
You get a problem with this sometimes, and they pull the eggs out and younglings out when they're climbing in and out.
But it shows a certain sign of contentment for the loft anyway, Michael.
Well, they do look healthy and well, and anything that's normally ill and bad is called out at an early stage.
So, do you dose for any illnesses of any kind?
I did do when I first started, because everybody kept saying you've got to dose for this, that and the other. We do doses them in the wild. So this year I haven't treated for anything. I haven't even fleed them this year.
No?
And as you can see, I've had the best performances I've ever had.
So no more dosing for you then?
The only cure is a dustbin, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Well, that's a good sign perhaps. You told me before that the origin of birds is one of the most important things. So what do you look for when you're buying birds?
Well, I go on instinct a lot, but when I go around the auction rooms, I usually go around and just look at the birds first. And if there's one that does happen to take your fancy, that's the one you look at. And then first of all, you look at the pedigree to see the maximum amount of winners that you can find close to the original. It's no good buying the ones that's 100%, 100 times removed.
So you want to get as near to the original as possible?
That's right, yeah. And you've got to obviously think about your money at the same time. Once I've seen the pedigree and studied the pedigree, then I'll look at the bird, and I've got to like the bird. It's got to sit in the hand nice. It's no good just looking nice, it's got to be nice bodied as well.
So you like to look at the pedigree and also you like to select the birds by handling them once you've narrowed the pedigree pigeons down?
That's right, yeah. I don't like too sharp a keel. If it's got too sharp a keel, then it goes straight back in there and I never give it another glance, no matter how much it goes for.
So do you look for any particular eye colouring on a pigeon?
When I look in the eye, I like to see it looking back at me and be nice and rich and full of life. It's no good one that's dull and drab and doesn't look like it's got any life in there.
So you like a nice colourful eye, not a pale eye at all?
No, not at all.
What about the throat theory? Do you look at the throats at all?
Never really looked at it, and never. You can tell if a pigeon's healthy when you've got it at home, or what's the name. So what's the point in looking down its throat?
Yep. Any particular wing theories, Mick? Have you any? Do you like to see a nice step in the wing, or good strong feathers, or anything in particular?
Well, I open the wing up and I keep checking the flights, but I've never really had any preference. It keeps changing every time, every year, so I don't think I really know a great deal about it at the moment.
Would you say that you've got good pigeons with thin flights, or broad flights, or big wings? And
medium. They've got medium flights. They're not too big and not too thin.
I understand there's quite a story about the good Van der Weggen cock that you bought from an auction sale. Perhaps you could tell us about that, mate.
Well, in the first year I went to buy 2 pigeons from Blackpool, and I'm a colour pigeon fancier at the time. So I bought this mealy cock, and then I went to the auction to buy a mealy pied hen, which was a Scottish pigeon, which went right out of my price range very quickly. And I'm quickly panicking, looking through the price list. I seen that this pigeon on the end was the last pigeon coming up for auction, which was from the Ponderosa stud, and it looked like a hen. So I thought, well, I'll have to buy this, although it was a blue check. So I actually bought it, and it's proved to be a very successful sire of many national pigeons.
So it turned out to be a cock rather than a hen?
It turned out to be a cock, yeah. It got 10 nest flights when I bought it, and this was at the Blackpool sales.
Very good. And this came direct from the Ponderosa to the...
Yeah, it was one they'd given the charity sale, yeah.
Yeah, very good. And after that, did you get any more pigeons from Ponderosa stud?
I had one more. I bred a good pigeon called Amos off this Van der Weggen pigeon. He scored 179th in young bird Midland National Pickerbill, which was a pretty tough race. So I wrote and told Ponderosa, and they sent me free of charge a Van Ranroy cock. And this one proved to be the sire of the first section for National Flying Club this year.
That's a tremendous couple of pigeons there then, Mick, being the channel winners. And are they your main stock birds then, would you say?
They're my main 2 stock cocks, yeah, for that sort of distance.
Would you say that it's important to have birds from stock that are used to the widowwood system?
It appears to be the case, but I think if you've got pigeons that aren't from that stock, if you keep them on the widowwood, you can keep them fit. So you've got to adapt the system to suit that pigeon.
I see. So,
but only at the distance racing. It's no good trying to do them at short races.
No, no. Your widowwood system, you can adapt perhaps non-widowwood pigeons to it, you think?
I think so, yes.
Good, good. To the year then, Michael, when you pair up, what date do you pair the birds?
Well, this year, to maximise the young ones from the stock pigeons, I actually paired them up about December the 10th. And at the same time, I paired some of the widowwood cocks up. I didn't really think a lot of to use as feeders. And then every couple of weeks, I put a different hen in with the stock pigeons and paired some more widowwood cocks up. But the main widowwood pigeons weren't paired up until about the 3rd week of February, and some as late as March.
I see. So when did you start racing the Widowwood cocks? Would that be towards the end of April or
To the very end of April. There's some on them at the beginning of May.
But these were pigeons that you'd got really earmarked perhaps for the Nationals.
That's right, yeah.
Races.
I mean, this year it was ice cold in them first races, and I just wouldn't send. It was just a waste of time. There's nothing to win. You're just scoring pigeons.
So do you pair them all on the same date, or the date was staggered then, was it?
The dates were staggered, and some of the pigeons, the hens were away while the others were just being paired up in the Widowwood team.
So do you think by staggering the dates it brings them into form at different times, or?
Supposedly, but I think at the end of the day it's the pigeon that counts. And from these very difficult races, it's better if you've got a pigeon in form, but you can't always achieve that.
No. So do you keep the cocks to the same hens that they were paired to perhaps the season before, or does the one cock have the same hen all the time?
No, I like to pair cocks to different hens to get different pigeons to race for the next year, to get as many variations as possible. You might have a pigeon in there that will match with one and not with another. And by crossing and mixing round, they seem happy and content enough.
Right. So you actually breed from the widowers then, do you?
Yes, I breed from, not all of them, only the best, for what I consider to be well bred.
And how many youngsters in a nest do the widowers rear? A lot of people just, well, perhaps won't rear any young birds off the widowers.
I'll rear two, and then by the time they sit in the next round of eggs, depending on what's happening, sometimes the hens will be taken away before the youngsters are finished, and sometimes they'll sit them eggs for about 10 days. But I'm led to believe that no longer than 10 days, because this spoils the widowwood performances.
So, well, just to summarise then, they rear a couple of youngsters in the nest, and then when the hen's been sitting about 10 days, you take the hens away?
Take the hens away, and take everything away, just leave the bowl in there.
And that's perhaps, what, middle of April, is it, by that time?
That's right, yeah.
So when do you actually start training the widowwood cocks then?
Well, it's no specific time. I just like to give them a few tosses and then chuck them straight into the race.
So is that when the weather's decent, you don't have to train when the hens are in and the eggs are there?
Yeah, I only take them on a nice day. I won't take them when it's a bit lousy.
Yeah. So do they actually race back to the hens, or is it when the hens have gone that you start training?
With the yearlings this year, they actually went training before the hens were away and the youngsters were away. But that was just to give them a bit of a perk up and get them back into the system of racing.
I see. So how many training tosses do they have before the first race? Are you particular about that?
Not really. If they fly them well, it doesn't really matter with the older pigeons.
Yeah, so
some people, they chuck them straight in from the top of the loft.
So you don't say that they've got to go 20 miles before they go to a race or anything?
But 5 or 6 is quite adequate for the yearlings, and the rest is a couple of 3.
Yeah, okay. And when you do the training, do you have the hen in the box waiting for the cock's return in the training season?
I have done in the past, but I don't think it really matters for the training purposes. As long as he knows it's there before he goes to that race on the Friday, that's what counts.
I see. So when the season starts, do you show the hen to the cock before the first race, for the inland race? Or?
I have done it. But with some pigeons I found they were miles behind every week, and I think they were getting too excited. So I actually started just giving them the nest bowl, and their performances rapidly improved. And rather than being last, they were up there with the front pigeons.
Yeah. Well, we know that really you're not too interested in inland racing. As far as I can gather, it's just a case of getting the pigeons fit. Is that correct, mate?
To get them fit and to give them experience with the yearlings and the young birds.
So any prizes that you win, is that a bonus?
I don't even know what I've won inland racing when I actually win half the time, so I don't even consider them.
I noticed from your performance book that you've never actually listed your inland wins. I know there have been 1 or 2, but it really shows to me that doesn't matter much to you.
No, the pigeon, it doesn't count on the pigeon, especially as we fly in a reasonably small club. If it was a large club, obviously the wins would count, but with it being a small club, I think it's just a case of taking your turn.
I see. What do you do with the nest ball, Mick? Do you leave the nest ball in with the cocks all the time? Or?
I find that if you left the nest bowl in, nice and clean, during the week it would pick up all the dust. And when the hen went in on the Friday, she would disturb all the dust, which is what you don't want for an athlete. So I actually do turn the nest bowl over now, during the week, and it stays turned over on a Friday, and it's only turned over on a Saturday afternoon and I'm waiting for the arrival of the cocks.
So on a Friday night then, you don't turn the nest ball face up?
No, the hens aren't in there long enough for them to actually worry about that.
I see.
I actually put the hens in, one at a time. I put one in, go and fetch the next hen. When she's in the box, that first hen is removed, and it goes like that until they're all done.
And is that just for inland racing, or is that for channel racing as well?
That's for channel racing as well. But from the having said that, from the poor race, rather than upset all the other cocks which are going to a different race the next day, I just went in and grabbed the cocks and put them in the basket. They didn't see anything.
I see. Oh, that's quite a revelation then. So the Paul pigeon, the one that won the section at Paul, didn't see his hen before he went to the race?
No, and I think this contributed to him staying quiet in the basket.
Yes, indeed, yes. Well, Paul, they were in the basket from Tuesday until, well, they were held over on Friday.
That's right.
Tuesday until Saturday.
Well, they're liberated Sunday afternoon.
So
it's a good long way in the basket, and if he's too excited, then he'll have burnt himself out before he's actually liberated.
I see. If you're expecting a fast race, perhaps inland, do you still show the hens?
Yes, this routine never changes. It's always the same. If you upset the routine, you upset the pigeons.
And do you race all the widowwood cocks every week, or does some rest some weeks?
During the first inland races, once they started, they go every week, regardless. But once they've started channel racing, they basically just do channel racing, unless there's 3 weeks between channel races, in which case, in the middle of the week, in the middle of the channel race, they'll go to one of the inland races, but only if the weather's fine.
Is that to keep them fit, to keep them going, or?
It's to keep them on the toes and keep them fit, yes.
So tell us about the exercise, Mick. How often do you let them out?
I let them out during the summertime, twice a day. They come out in the morning and they have to be out for an hour. Whether they fly or not, it's up to them. And the same in the afternoons. But this year, the weather was atrocious this year. It was cold and pigeons just didn't want to fly. So I actually started flagging them. And I would flag them until I could see that they were really ready to drop. And I think this was what brought them home in the Nance race.
Well, that's right. It was quite early in the season, around June the 9th.
That's right.
And if I remember, it was quite cold at that time of the year, and well, my pigeons certainly weren't flying around too well at home.
That's right. And I found they didn't fly at all. But when they come back from a race on the Saturday, Sunday morning they wouldn't really fly, but then on Sunday night the flag come out again. And it stayed like that all week, until I got to about 45 minutes flying out of them on a Thursday. And on a Friday, depending how much flying they'd done in the week, they either went out or they didn't. If they were pretty fit, I wouldn't let them out, but if I considered they were a bit sluggish, I'd let them out Friday mornings.
So some Fridays you let the pigeons out, and some Fridays you let them out. And when you're basketing on a Wednesday, say, for channel racing, do the pigeons fly out Wednesday morning, or?
No, there's not time. And you've got to get them ready, and somebody else has got to pick them up and take them. You might not get them in as well, so there's no point. All the work should have been done by then.
The work's been done before.
That's right.
I see. Now, the feeding, Mick, I know you're really keen on tick beans.
That's right.
What do you feed perhaps on a Monday then?
Well, they come back from a race on a Saturday and they're on my homemade depurative, which is basically riddled young bird mix and wheat and barley. And Sunday morning's probably the same. And then on a Sunday night, they're on beans right the way through. And to this I add other bits of corn, but the majority of the food is beans.
Is that best tick beans, or?
It's best farm tick beans from a local farmer up the road. They're good quality beans.
Oh, perhaps I have to have a look at those beans later on.
Yeah.
Are they the horse beans or just standard tick beans?
Just nice little beans. I don't like the big beans. They don't like eating beans anyway, and if you give them nice small beans, they tend to eat plenty but don't put on a lot of weight.
I see. So beans are mainly protein feeds.
That's right.
Do you add any other type, any maize or any carbohydrates?
Well, on the build up to the channel races, they do get 2 sorts of maize added, which is mixed, which you just bought, any old 2, as long as they're 2 different sorts, it doesn't really matter.
Good quality, I presume.
Good quality, and it's just added to the beans, which are in front of them all day. And to that I might just add peanuts. For the channel races I actually filled the crops up with peanuts as well, and I found that they didn't just eat peanuts and leave everything else. they didn't get sick of them, but they didn't just gorge themselves on peanuts and nothing else.
So to recap then, you're on the hopper, you put beans in the hopper, and it's
right.
there in front of them 24 hours a day, is that right?
24 hours a day, yeah.
And you add to it 2 different sorts of maize.
Yeah.
And
peas go in, just white dumb peas as well. And towards the last week of the build up for the channel, there is peanuts in there.
and do they like the peanuts?
They love the peanuts, but I buy my peanuts from the supermarket. They're good enough for us to eat, they're good enough for them.
Quite right, quite right. So perhaps when they come back from the race, is that the only time that they get the depurative mix in?
That's the only time, yeah. For the first few races I might put them on it, but I've heard lots of people say don't break them down and keep them on the best. With the naturals they keep them on the best.
So do your pigeons have depurative just on a Saturday after the race, or Sunday as well?
Sunday morning perhaps, but I mean I might just give them a Widowwood mix. But
So
that'll be the only time.
certainly no
see
longer than Sunday then?
No, no.
It's tick beans all the
right.
way from...
My
Sunday
first
night.
channel race on Widowwood last year, I did feed the Widowwood mixes, and I thought they're really fit and sent them and pulled them to the hilt, and I was miles behind. And some of the pigeons were very, very tired, and this was put down to the fact that they wasn't eating properly. So the beans went in, and that was it. I've stuck to them ever since.
So the quantity of food that they get is really up to the pigeon themselves, and they take what they want.
Well, they know what they want, don't they? And it's up to them. If they don't suit my system, they won't be there long. They'll soon
Yes.
get lost.
So what happens to the cocks that don't go to the races? Do you shut those in the box, or?
They're built up the same, and then I lock them in the box, but I take the bowl out, and they stay there until the majority of the cocks are back. But then the very late cocks, well, all the pigeons are released out of the boxes then, but the very late cocks, they put in the box with a hen, but I board it off so it doesn't upset the cocks too much. They know what's going on, but as long as they can't get up there and interfere, that's all right.
Yeah. So any latecomers from your inland races, do they see the hen when they come back?
They do as long as they get on the night time, but it's only for about 15 minutes. But from the channels, obviously it's longer.
So when a cock returns, how long does it see its hen for then?
It's got to be about 15 minutes